Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Talking Grit is brought to you by the Monroe County Reporters, Monroe's top news source for police, fire, and community events.
Post 3 at Depot Street. Truck boy at
Follow them on Facebook, and for $2.99 a month, you can become a subscriber and get the news you crave even faster.
Welcome to Talking Grit. You can follow us on Twitter at Talking Grit Pod. I'm Jason Harwood. You can follow me on Twitter at Jason_TG Pod. And with me is Jacob Litton. You can find him on Twitter at JMALLITTON. We have another episode of the Pride Preview to share with everyone. It's great to be back after a long bye week. It's 1 week without football, just seems like forever. But now we have 13 straight regular season weeks of Lions football to enjoy. That's regular season football. We plan on enjoying it much further into the season. Today on the Pride Preview, we are going to feature two interviews. First one is Joseph Hoyt. He's a Dallas Cowboys beat writer, and Skywalker Steele from A to Z Sports Dallas Show, a YouTube channel. Both of these interviews are great. I'm looking forward to you listening to them. Do not miss them. They're going to get you ready for this Week 6 matchup. Speaking of getting ready for this Week 6 matchup, Jacob, first of all, it's great to see you. How you been?
Good. I've been really good. Hey, Tigers baseball's been on. It's making up for the week without the Lions.
I know. I can't believe something's steering my attention away from the Lions, because generally football season I'm all football, I'm locked in. But I'm a huge Tigers fan, and what they're doing on the baseball field is the gritty equivalent of what the Lions do, right? I mean, these gritty Tigers.
Absolutely. Just awesome for them to be playing October baseball again.
I know. Love it. I was at the game Wednesday. I was at game 3. I was talking to you earlier about it, Jacob. I had a 9-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 89-year-old, because I brought my grandma to the game. Huge Tigers fan. She was a big part of my sports upbringing and understanding and enjoying baseball. So it was great to share that moment with my boys and her. It was a live environment there. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome to get a win, too.
Yeah.
At home. Like, that's awesome. Unbelievable season, and it continues on.
Yep.
Hopefully we seal the deal in game 4 at home.
That would be nice. Yep. By the time people are listening to this tomorrow, hopefully we're on our way. So, all right, let's get into the Dallas Cowboys. First, we're going to hit on the impact players. Jacob, you got the PFF grades on some of their impact players. I'm going to let you tell us what they are.
Here we go. Impact players for the Dallas Cowboys. First, we're going to start on offense. Quarterback Dak Prescott. He's ranked Pro Football Focus 20th quarterback. NFL Top 100 this year, he was number 16. Obviously, the Pro Football Focus ranking is not very impressive, but he's towards the top of most passing statistics so far this year. Definitely, their star player and worth mentioning, along with their wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, who's ranked Pro Football Focus number 53. NFL Top 100, he was the number 13 player on the list. That 53 is misleading on Pro Football Focus, because CeeDee is obviously an impact player. He's somebody that you have to know where he's at on the field at all times. And, definitely a huge part of their offense. Zach Martin, the offensive guard, Pro Football Focus number 8, NFL Top 100 number 53. Obviously, he's a perennial, top 10 Pro Football Focus player at his position. Just continuously one of the best to do it. And then we flip over to the defensive side of the ball. Micah Parsons, Pro Football Focus number 11, NFL Top 100 number 17. He is injured right now. He didn't play last week. Doesn't look like he's going to play this week, but I guess there may be an outside chance. Obviously, it's better for our offense if he doesn't play in this game, because this guy's a game wrecker, as is Aiden Hutchinson. So those are the impact players that we have for the Cowboys this week.
We just played Dallas. Obviously, we all remember the game last year. We don't need to, bring that up again. They've had some changes, lots of injuries going on right now. And, that maybe speak to why we'll go through some of their draft picks. And they have 4 starters, really 5, but one's just went on the IR. They, the first 5 rounds. They've had 5 starters right now. First was Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, tackle. He's starting. Second, hometown kid here, Western Michigan, and Marshawn Nealon, edge player. He's on the IR right now, so he's out and injured. Their starting center, Cooper Beebe, Kansas State. Also in the 3rd round, they have Maurice Leafau from Notre Dame, linebacker, starting right now, playing actually pretty good. And then they have Kalen Carson from Wake Forest, cornerback. He's starting again due to injuries. So we're hitting the Cowboys at a right time as far as the injury bug, because we're going to be playing some practice squad players and some just young players, and having a tackle out there with Aiden Hutchinson sounds mighty tasty to me.
For sure. Definitely young offensive line. On paper, it looks like Hutch should have a huge game.
And he does a lot of times versus the Cowboys, but we can get in that a little bit later on.
Yeah.
All right, Jacob, you want to talk a little bit about their free agent signings?
Yeah, so I would say it's more impactful the people that left than the people they signed, but we're going to go over that. Moving on from the team last year, offensive tackle Tyron Smith, their starting center Tyler Biadasz, their starting running back Tony Pollard. They lost defensive tackle Jonathan Hankins. Linebacker Leighton Vander Esch actually retired, along with their wide receiver Michael Gallup, and cornerback Stephon Gilmore. These are huge names. A lot of them are starters that are no longer with the Cowboys, as you kind of spoke to already. That's probably why they've got so many young rookies or younger players starting. The big signings that they had, they re-signed their cornerback Jordan Lewis. He's a nickel cornerback, but he's an impact player at times. We know him from Michigan. They re-signed running back Ezekiel Elliott. Hasn't worked out for them so far. We'll get into that later. And then I guess the biggest signing would be linebacker Eric Kendricks, who's been a big part of the defense thus far.
The only other big news, really, offseason moves is, their defensive coordinator Quinn went over to interdivision to the Washington Commanders. He's enjoying some early success over there. He's been replaced with a new defensive coordinator, Mike Zimmer, who we all know because he used to head coach our division rival, the Minnesota Vikings. Dan Quinn obviously had the defense playing at a higher level. Reason why the defense might not be playing at a high level right now is because what we're going to get into right now, injury report. Jacob, why don't you run down through this long list of Cowboys, and then we'll hit on the Lions list.
So Cowboys injury report. This is the most current report we have as of Wednesday evening. So things could change here, but we have Micah Parsons did not practice. Like I said earlier, they don't think that he's going to play. I guess they're giving him an outside chance. We'll see. Eric Kendricks also did not practice. Don't know if that's due to rest or if this is really going to be an injury concern, because they feel like he is going to play. Then you have DeMarcus Lawrence is out. He's been put on IR. Wide receiver Brandon Cooks is also out. The offensive tackle, Tyler Guyton, got in a full practice. He was hurt. And then the biggest one, I guess you would say for them, is their cornerback, Deron Bland, who has not played thus far. He got injured before the season started. He got in a full practice, and it looks like he is going to play. Could be in a limited role. We're not sure, but that's big for them to have him out there on defense.
Yep. That one's, they're getting one player back. They've lost a lot of players, but getting Deron Bland will be good for their secondary. As far as the Lions, mostly, actually, pretty much all good news. Brian Branch and Frank Ragnow both had a full practice, or Lions really didn't practice today. They practiced yesterday, but estimated full practice, which most likely means they're going to go. They have activated Christian Mahogany, so he has a 3-week window right now, so he can practice with the Lions. So then the Lions have to either decide to put him on the active roster or try to stash him on the practice squad, depending on how he's doing. So they'll have 3 weeks from now to decide that. But it's encouraging that they've decided to activate that window. Means he's healthy enough to get there. What's kind of discouraging is Dan Campbell earlier this week talked about Derek Barnes, and the statement he said is if we're going to be lucky to get him back this year at all. So it sounds like he's going to have an extended stay on the IR, which is unfortunate for him and for the Lions. So I didn't like hearing that, but Trevor Nowaski, they are excited about him, and he's going to get a chance to play in that Sam role, it sounds like.
There are some big names. I was going to save this for later, but you kind of spoke into it right now. So there's some big names that are available out there right now. Linebacker Devin White was just released by the Eagles. So that's somebody potentially that we could bring in for a tryout or bring in, just to see what he has. There's also quite a few names that are on the trade block right now, including Hassan Reddick of the Jets. Those are two, potential decent edge rushers and decent Sam linebackers. How would you feel about exploring either of those options?
Not happy. I'm not interested in either one. Devin White, I'd never been impressed with him. I don't think he's really going to fit what the Lions want to do. He's not a great tackler, in my opinion. Not going to, I think the tread's pretty thin on the tire on that. And Hassan Reddick is he doesn't really fit what the Lions want to do. And also, I don't think Dan Campbell's going to take too kindly to a player just sat out. And Hassan Reddick wants a contract. He's not going to get that from the Lions. It's just not going to happen. So I don't think that would happen. And plus, I don't want to give up assets that you would have to give up for Reddick. Probably, maybe not that much. The longer he sits out, the less he's worth to the Jets. So you could get him for cheap. But I'm not really interested in either one of them. How about you?
Our name has been associated with both of them, but I think that's more speculation. People still don't get the idea what you kind of talked to about. We want players that fit in with our locker room and that fit in with what we're trying to do. So maybe when you're just looking at on the football field what they offer, then yes, that would make sense to have, a linebacker or an edge rusher. But when you talk about the type of players that they are, the type of people that they are, I just don't think, especially right in the middle of the season, that they would mesh in with the locker room. And, you said it about Reddick, just the fact he's holding out would rub a lot of people the wrong way anyway. So then to bring him on, and then especially to bring him on and let him take a starting spot and then potentially have to pay him a contract, it's just so unlike what the Lions have been doing. I don't see it happening. Any of the targets, there's other trade targets that are out there right now, and our name's been associated with a few of them. Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Amari Cooper, Budda Baker. I think maybe just because of the fact that we have Super Bowl aspirations, maybe that's why they think we're buyers at the trade deadline. I just don't see any of those names happening. I don't see us making a move.
Yeah, outside of an injury, the only one I would say is Budda Baker. But the way the Cardinals are playing, I can't imagine them deciding that they have something to play for, especially as injured as the Rams and the 49ers are. They got some room to move there. I think we talked about it with Bo in our thing that Arizona wouldn't get what they're not going to get enough to even warrant trading him. Whether they re-sign him or not, they're probably not going to get enough to warrant trade him. Unless we have an injury, we already have Brian Branch, and he's basically that player. So I'm not saying I wouldn't want Budda Baker, because I certainly would, but he wouldn't probably be worth giving up assets because it'd be a duplication of what we already have here. Like I said, outside of an injury, but that's really the only player that I'm like overly would be excited about getting, unless like Max Crosby or something, the Raiders decide to do something crazy.
That's a huge one for us. We've talked about that.
And we've talked about that. That's the only player that I would be willing to give up assets for, just because he would fit us, like our team, like a glove. Be amazing to see him outside of Hutch. The league wouldn't have let it happen because it would. We'd be
that's just unfair.
Player safety. The quarterbacks would just be getting crushed. So they probably wouldn't let that happen. So I mean, that's a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. Sure, would I like to have a Devontae Adams? Yeah, I would love to have Devontae Adams, but again, I don't know how well he fits on this team personality wise. I mean, I don't know Devontae Adams, so I can't judge him on that. But when you add a player mid-season, that'll be tough. Plus, he's going to go to the Jets. That's going to happen. It's going to happen, unfortunately. Budda Baker is the only one out of that list that you mentioned that I would really be excited about. But the rest, it's hard. Football's so hard to it's not like a baseball player adding a season. It's not like
basketball.
That. Yeah, you can, baseball, I'm not saying it's not a team game, but there's not like plays that have to set up, and you don't have to know your teammates as much as football is the ultimate team game. And there's so much that you have to know going in. And just, especially with our boy Jared Goff, he has to develop this trust with you, just like all quarterbacks do. But it just seems like, Jared Goff is he's already got Amon-Ra there. We got J-Mo. I mean, Devontae would just make, that would be another huge weapon. But, if you're not getting him the ball enough, is he happy that, like he's not happy at the Raiders?
Yeah, I think he'd be happy to win, but I mean, you're right. It's just going to take time no matter who you get in there. We saw it with Tim Patrick. I mean, you can't come right away and we can't start you and you can't play 60 or 70% of the snaps. You don't know the plays. You don't have the timing down. It just doesn't work for anybody.
Now, that's what has made me pretty impressed with Tim Patrick. He seems like he came in right at the end of the season, no preseason games. And, already in week 4, he was making some pretty big time catches and plays in that Seattle game. So I'm encouraged by seeing what he's going to move forward. And I think we already got our guy that we need, like that big body receiver that we can throw to on third down. And hopefully we find red zone opportunities with him, because I think that is, what, Lions kind of miss in that red zone is that Josh Reynolds safety valve if Amon-Ra, Laporta are covered. We haven't seen J-Mo. He's had that touchdown in San Francisco in the red zone, but we haven't really, most of J-Mo's touchdowns are outside the red zone. He's scoring deep touchdowns, which I'm not going to complain about. But when we get down the red zone, we need options. All right. Jacob, you want to go over the Cowboys season results so far?
Yes. Where we stand right now, the Cowboys, their record right now is 3-2. They are currently second in the NFC East. Their wins are against the Browns, who they handled pretty easily in week 1, but then they lost to the Saints in week 2, lost the Ravens in week 3, and their last 2 weeks they won against the Giants and against the Steelers, and both of those were very close games. The Steelers was obviously right there at the end where they won. So kind of in the middle of the pack right here.
Yeah, you didn't explain the loss to the Saints. They didn't just get beat. They got trounced against the Saints.
Right.
The Saints were world beaters weeks 1 and 2. I don't know where they went since then, but that's crazy. They just trounced the Cowboys that game. So, we'll see 3-2. They're still in the thick of things in the NFC East is kind of wide open. The Commanders are leading that thing. And Jaden Daniels is looking like a world beater. So that's kind of interesting what's going on out there. Let's be a spoiler and, knock them down to 500. That would be great.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit before we get to the interviews. We'll quickly touch on just let you know where the Cowboys offensive defensive rankings are at. So in offense, they're 12th in yards per game, second in passing yards per game. So that's where their bread and butter is. They rank 4th in yak. So that, thinking that forward, you're getting a lot of yards after catch. CD accounts for a lot of that, CD Lamb. And, where they struggle is the rushing yards per game, 31st in the NFL in rushing yards per game. So, Lions stop the run. It seems like that's a no-brainer that we're going to be able to stop this team that's 31st, but it depends on where we put our assets. If the Lions, go light in the box because we want to provide help to our secondary, we'll see. I mean, they might find a little bit of room, but I would plan on the Lions shutting down this run game. You want to go through their defensive rankings, Jacob?
Yeah, where it stands right now, the Cowboys are pretty much in the middle of the defensive rankings. They are 15th in yards per game. That breaks down to their 11th best in the pass yards per game and 24th in the rush yards per game. So, offensive and defensive side of the ball, they're much better in the passing game than they are in the running game, which is what we like to hear because we have 2 very good running backs and we want to exploit that run defense.
That's correct. All right. So without further ado, we're going to head off to our first interview. It's with Joseph Hoyt. He's a beat reporter for the Cowboys. We mostly touch on the offense with Joseph. We'll see you on the other side. Talking Grit would like to welcome Joseph Hoyt, Cowboys beat reporter for All City and DLLS. How you doing, Joe?
Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing real well. Yeah, great to have you on. Great for you clearing out your schedule and helping us out here. Appreciate it.
No problem, man. I'm excited for this game this weekend. Obviously, a rematch of a fun one we had last year, too. And I think, two different teams from last year as well, a little bit. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, good. First of all, the question I have, Dallas Cowboys are one of those teams that either you love them or hate them. So how is it covering a team like that with that dynamic?
Yeah, no, a very interesting question. I mean, the Cowboys are America's team, which means you get America's attention, and, and that means you get a lot of people who don't like them and a lot of people who love them, to your point. And I think, honestly, it's more about what the national perspective is of the team, covering the team locally for a team that has such a big national brand. But you don't go a day without seeing some type of hot take or claim about something. I was even laughing during last Sunday's game against Pittsburgh, because there was a sideline sequence after Dak Prescott interception where CeeDee Lamb is seen like kind of mouthing something. And it was funny because you wonder just kind of sometimes what the inherent bias of whoever creating things is like, ooh, that looks dramatic. Let's kind of make it dramatic. It was a clip where CD is literally just saying, hey, jump ball 4, throw the jump ball to me instead of the back shoulder. And then after that, they like cut to Dak Prescott with his head down and very just in his thing. And it almost looks sad. And it was just very dramatic for something that like they talk all the time. So to your point, there's just a lot of attention on this team. And that's kind of the thing I've noticed in the years covering them.
Yeah, for a Lions fan, we were pretty much out of everybody's attention for, 30 years or longer. And so we are kind of getting used to some of that additional attention and just critique that you get with being a team that America wants to see. So, and, we'll be on America's Game of the Week this week with you guys. We're looking forward to that. I'll report eligible for watching that game. If we go back to last year's matchup. So, which was totally not your guys' fault. That was Brad Allen's fault. So I don't blame any Cowboys for any of that, but that was ridiculous.
That was wild, man. I was in the press box for that. And it was like, what just happened? Like, and everyone's trying to piece it together. And that was insane.
Yeah, because it was like that on the broadcast too, because they were trying to figure it out at the same time. They probably have more information available to them than you do in the press box, but you probably have like the TV broadcast going up there, I would imagine, don't you?
Yeah, we have that going. But even so, sometimes with those things, it's so hectic. And because that was such an important point in the game too, it was like trying to figure it out on the fly really quickly because it mattered.
Right. And you guys probably had a lot of your article written for like what you're going to write about the game at that point, because it's right towards the end. And then all of a sudden the whole focus of the game switches from what happened before to that play, right?
It's crazy, dude. Yeah, even last game with the Cowboys, just a little behind the scenes, like they have a game-winning touchdown, and so we have to have a story ready to go right when the game ends. So it's like, game-winning touchdown with 30 seconds left. That's already traumatic. But then you hear things that like Jalen Tolbert, the guy who caught the game-winning touchdown, quote, hurt his, we'll fully quote it, but he hurt his area down there. Mm-hmm. And so, that was like, story changes fast. It's funny.
That's crazy. I was looking through some of the stuff that you had written, and you had an article that Jared Jones made a comment. It's time for the no names to become names. For us Lions fans that may not be familiar with that, who's he referring to with that comment?
Yeah, so he made that comment a couple of days before the draft, and it was kind of more in defense of the lack of moves they had made, because he had started the offseason by saying, hey, we're going to go all in this season. And when you hear that as a fan, you're like, oh, okay, so here come the moves, here come the trades, here come the big moves, and ultimately they never came. So he was kind of saying, hey, these no names have to become names. What I mean by that is the young guys that we have on the roster that you've not heard of really yet, maybe the 7th rounders from a couple of years ago, 6th rounders, the undrafted guys, and then even the rookies in this year's class, they got to become names. And I thought because of the timing of all the injuries the Cowboys had, no Micah Parsons last week, no DeMarcus Lawrence, no Brandon Cooks, and you had to see guys like, yeah, maybe you'd heard of Jalen Tolbert, but he's not only got to be just a guy that can get 3 targets and make 1 play. He's got to be a guy that could be a number 2 receiver. And you saw that happen. He had led the team with 10 targets because they were really covering CeeDee Lamb a lot. And then you had to have guys on defense too, like Chauncey Golston, make plays that you'd heard of a little bit, but now he had to make plays. You'd never heard of Tyrus Wheat, probably, if you were a Cowboys fan. I'm sure Lions fans have never heard of him, but he had to play 72% of snaps on defense last week because of the injuries going into the game and then the subsequent injury to 2nd-round pick Marshawn Nealon. So long story short, there's just a lot of guys that like maybe you'd heard of or maybe you hadn't heard of that had to become not only household names in a moment, but they had to become guys that the Cowboys relied upon heavily against the Steelers and well against the Lions as well.
Yeah, injury bug has bitten you pretty hard. Sometimes it's not who you face, it's when you face them. And this Lions better be ready to take advantage of it because losing out on your top 2 defensive players is going to be huge. Sticking with the offense here, Dak Prescott, I've been looking at his stats. He's very good against pressure here. He's like one of the least blitz quarterbacks. Why is he so good at handling pressure? Is it offense's design or is it something that Dak's doing?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a little bit of both, frankly. I think Dak is very cool and calm. He doesn't really freak out. It's funny because even if they're losing by 21, players will tell you that he comes into the huddle and he's very just like, all right, we're going to win this game. And this is how we're going to do it. And it's like, all right, Dak. But, it's kind of a testament to just how much he believes not only in himself, but his teammates. But the other thing from an offensive standpoint, to your point, is they really harp heavily on 2.3. And that's kind of the time clock that they want the ball to come out by, or at least, hey, now you got to go make a play, Dak Prescott. So I think when you have such an integrated time clock and you have an offense that's based on the timing of that, where you're going to have guys with West Coast principles running, hey, this guy's going to do a short curl, but over here, maybe this is your third read. It's going to actually do a little bit of a deeper route. So if you don't hit this window, you're going to have to move over there. So he's very good at just kind of knowing the timing of things. And it kind of helps when you have your first options, usually a guy like CeeDee Lamb who can get open. He's one of the best in the game. And he got paid like it for a reason. He's still not, he missed training camp, so he's still not exactly where you want him to be, but he's still a guy that Dak Prescott looks to often. And Jalen Tolbert's a guy that's going to have to step up, kind of as I mentioned again. But Dak just has a good feel for the time clock. I tell you though, it's been sped up this year because of a rookie left tackle who's been struggling, and Terrence Steele, who's always been kind of a struggle in pass protection, and that really hasn't changed that much this season.
Yeah, you mentioned the next guy I wanted to talk about, CeeDee Lamb. I mean, he got paid this offseason, like you said. People, fantasy players, they're very interested in him. But, he's had 378 yards so far this season. From our perspective, the holdout didn't slow him down at all. But for you, I mean, you see him every day in and out, so you'll notice more things than we will. How do you think he's looked? Is he, 80% of where he should be, or is he all the way? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I don't think he was. It's weird because I think CeeDee Lamb at 80% is still a Pro Bowl receiver, right? And I still think that he's been really, he's had a couple of plays where you go, man, that's the CeeDee Lamb of last year. I think the thing missing right now is the consistency though. And part of it is the attention he's getting, because not only is Brandon Cooks out, but early in the season, you had Jake Ferguson, who's one of their go-to tight ends. He was hurt a little bit. And the offense itself, to be honest with you, was very still through the first 4 games. They did not utilize motion at all. The running game was non-existent in the first 4 games. Both those things kind of changed last week, but they also really paid a lot of attention to CeeDee Lamb. And then in kind of a sloggy track, it was kind of hard for him to get open. Long question short, I don't think he's back to being the CeeDee Lamb of old. He also added a lot more muscle this offseason. So part of me wonders if he's still kind of trying to figure out exactly how to carry that a little bit. I still think that he's kind of finding his footing. And I think they're going to need him to find his footing against this Detroit Lions defense.
Oh, nice. All right. You just mentioned the rushing offense been pretty dismal. Is that because of the RB situation or offensive line or combination of both?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, but also throw in the fact that they haven't had a lot of attempts up until at least last week, because game situations dictated against it. If you go look back at the Baltimore game, the New Orleans game, they were down early and by a lot very early. So ultimately, running the ball was kind of something they couldn't really do if they wanted to get back in the game. Cleveland, they couldn't sustain in the season opener, they couldn't sustain drives because they were struggling on third downs. So therefore, less attempts there. This past week was finally the first time where you saw what you thought the running game could be. And I put a little asterisk on that because there was not very high expectations in the offseason after they lost Tony Pollard. And instead of trying to replicate someone with that kind of financial commitment, they turned around and re-signed Rico Dowdle, who's been shown a lot of promise, but is a former undrafted free agent who had a lot of injury issues. And then they went back and signed Ezekiel Elliott, who there's a reason why they paid him to leave. Went so 2 years ago and brought him back. So ultimately, though, I think Rico Dowdle, they've been preaching this running back by committee approach. And I think last week is when we kind of first saw almost like an episode of Succession or something where one person really just stuck out. And that was Rico Dowdle. He had a career high in rushing yards. He had a career high in rushing attempts. He had a career high in total yards, had a 22-yard diving touchdown on a pass from Dak Prescott. And I think the most important thing with Rico Dowdle last week, if you go watch the film, there was synchronicity between the timing between his running and also the offensive line's development of blocks. One thing that offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer told us was that he runs a little too hot, meaning he just kind of sees a hole and hits it. And that's good, right? You have a guy who wants to hit the hole. But they needed him to slow it down a little bit. So they call it slow to go. Slow and then go when it's open. And that can kind of help with his vision. It's funny, I wrote a story, and I don't know if there's any Chapel Roan's fans out there, but she has a song called Hot to Go. So I changed it to SLOTOGO to think about the Cowboys running game. So that, if you want to know how they'll be successful against Detroit, slow to go.
Slow to go. Yeah, Lions, if one thing they're known for is stopping the run, and that's one thing that Dan Campbell preaches, that we're going to stop the run. Dak Prescott's, was he leading the league right now in passing? So you may be playing into their hand a little bit if we're just going to dominate the run. So it'll be interesting to see. How is the offensive line? Is there development there? Are they progressing? I know you're facing some injuries there.
Yeah, so Tyler Guyton is expected as of right now. We're going to find out more today, to be honest with you, on Wednesday, October 9th. But he's expected to play. He had a knee injury, kind of a little minor one that kept him out for the rest of the game against Pittsburgh. But that kind of allowed them to also see what life would be like if Tyler Guyton wasn't playing right now. And it looked a little bit better, to be honest with you. They moved Tyler Smith, their all-pro left guard, to left tackle. They brought in TJ Bass off the bench. And I think collectively, it looked a little bit better. The problem with that is they chose to go down this path of drafting a raw offensive tackle, right? So Tyler Guyton is extremely talented, but he's extremely green. He had one start at left tackle in college. He had less than 20 starts overall at tackle in college. So, but he's 6'8", has good arms, he's very athletic. So he's still trying to figure out his way, and they're trying to develop him as they go. And when you're trying to do that, you have growing pains. And to be honest with you, there's been a lot of growing pains so far with Tyler Guyton in terms of penalties and in terms of just allowing pressures. If you go back and watch what Nick Herbig, who's the Steelers' third pass rusher, so TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and then Herbig. If you go watch what Nick Herbig did to Tyler Guyton on Sunday, that could excite a lot of Lions fans at the possibility of Aiden Hutchinson lining up on Tyler Guyton. So yeah, we'll see about that. But collectively, not as good as people would have hoped.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you, if you're running the Cowboys offense, how are you going to attack this Lions defense? How do you think that's going to go?
Yeah, I mean, the lines are good. And the unfortunate thing about Dallas is I think you have to run the ball to open up the pass a little bit, to be honest. I think you need to utilize motion, maybe do some screen game that will help. And I think that's what I would try to do even against a tough Lions defense. That's the problem though, right? And or the other option is, and I think you saw a little bit of this in the first half against the Steelers, maybe throw to set up the pass a little bit. Maybe get Dak Prescott on some quick games. Maybe do some quick hitters in the flats with guys like Kevontae Turpin, who's a guy that Lions fans probably haven't heard a lot about, but he's extremely fast, extremely athletic. Short, he's their kick returner, but he's been kind of developing into more of just the gadget player, right? Dak Prescott hit him on a seam route, which is Dak's favorite route. Hit him on a seam for about a 25-yard gain. And Kevontae's like 5'9", 5'8". So he had to really make sure he got it open to him. So I think that those are the two options. Either you really harp early on the running game and kind of get creative with it to try to open up the pass, or you say, you know what, dude, against this Lions defense, let's hope that our tackles can give us enough time. I think that they believe that their interior offensive line can do that with rookie Cooper Beebe at center, Zach Martin and Tyler Smith. So I think that's maybe something that they will try to do. But at the end of the day, I think this entire season, Jason, comes down to what can Dak Prescott do and how can he put them on his back. And, sometimes it gets into a little bit of trouble. You saw a couple red zone turnovers last week against the Steelers, but at the end of the day, he also threw the game-winning touchdown pass on 4th and goal.
Yeah, I tend to, before these interviews, I sometimes go on Reddit just to get a feel of what people, think about their team, and just generally so I get some questions or some topics. And one of the memes I saw was Dak Prescott, the cause of and solution to all of our problems. And, I think a lot of teams feel like that about their quarterback. I know when the Matthew Stafford's time with us, that's exactly how I felt. And some of it was just trying to carry too much of the team on your back. If you don't have a running game like Stafford didn't, you're going to put out there. And when the ball goes in the air, there's a lot more chance for turnovers and stuff like that. So you're talking about the offensive line play. Do you think some of that problems with the tackles that you talk about is the reason why they're getting the ball out so fast? Is that part of their strategy?
Yeah, I think it has to be. I think they've always really kind of harped on or the last 2 years at least under Mike McCarthy calling plays, that the 2.3 seconds is kind of something that it's just a good time clock number for them, because that's what they base a lot of their offensive timing on. And that at 2.3 seconds, if you're Dak Prescott, you got to start making plays if that's the case. Last week, we actually saw a play where he had a little bit of time, but he allowed that time clock to go to 4 seconds as he was trying to wait for Kamante Turpin to get over on a drag route. What happened? That allowed Nick Herbig and TJ Watt to collide with him after the 4-second mark, force a fumble in the red zone. Next thing you know, it's Steelers ball. And I think that was kind of a good testament to why he needs to get the ball out a little bit earlier, especially with these tackles kind of struggling in pass protection. I do think Tyler Guyton's going to play, but there is that possibility that he doesn't. And I think that's one thing Lions fans should consider a little bit, is what would it be like if Tyler Smith has to move to left tackle and they throw in someone, maybe TJ Bass, maybe someone else to play left guard. We'll find out more today on that. So if you're a Lions fan, pay attention a little bit to that. But that's kind of the one catalyst, I think, in terms of, I think that they'd be better at pass protection that way, frankly.
Okay.
So that's, I don't know if it'd be better in the run game, but I think at this point in this season, it's kind of funny. We talk about on our show a little bit where it's like, this was like game 7 of the World Series, right? Yeah, you don't ask your starting pitcher on 2 days rest to come out of the bullpen in the 8th and 9th inning, right? But you need it. And the Lions game is a big game for them. Obviously, I think getting that win against the Steelers set them up, gave them a little bit of cushion. But you kind of wonder, it's like, hey, this is a huge one. It's a playoff preview. Do you throw that starting pitcher in the 9th inning, right? Do you use that lineup that just works better right now, even though it's not the best for the long run? That's something that I'm kind of watching.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that's a great point that you just made. It's like, are you going all in for one game, or are you going to look at the long-term effects? But, that's what the coaching staff gets paid for, right? Determine all that stuff. Before we let you out of here, first thing we do is we like to ask our guests for any prediction on the game. It doesn't have to be the end score or anything like that. Just something that you feel comfortable saying, hey, I think this is what's going to happen. So any predictions that you think for this game?
Yeah, I know we've talked a lot about the Cowboys offense, but my prediction probably is in the Lions offense. The Cowboys' run defense was horrible, frankly, in the first 3 games of the season. And it took the last 2 weeks, they took a giant step. I don't think that they take that step again against Detroit. If I'm a fantasy guy, I am hammering Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, whatever combo you want to do with that, or if you have both on your roster, play them. Like I think that they're going to have a great game, and ultimately, I do think the Lions win this. I think that they get a little bit of revenge from last year. I think we saw the other factor that can't really be calculated. This is a tough Lions team, like tough, they gritty. Obviously, they're kind of in the model of their head coach, and I think the Cowboys, for the first time last week, though, showed fight and grit this season. I'm wondering if that translates over. So I guess the two predictions, the Lions running game is going to do really well. I think the Lions ultimately win, but I think, though, that the Cowboys found some fight last week, and I think that they're going to fight against this team.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, Lions, it's really funny. The talk around here is after you play the Lions, every team that's played the Lions, that they've lost the following week. And I think it goes to show you that, you're just going to be in a dogfight. But the Lions, to your point, have also gotten the best shot from a lot of teams, which for many years we were the, afterthought. This is the get right game, whatever. But we're having to face that. Yeah, as a Lions fan, we're having to face everyone's, number one punch. So it's interesting. So I do like your prediction. You're appeasing to our listeners, so that's really cool. So they might want you back on.
There you go.
Before we go here, Joseph, tell us how we could check you out and where we could find you.
Yeah, you can find my work on social media at Joe J Hoyt, Hoyt. We have a 5 days a week show on YouTube at All City DLLS that we do on YouTube that turns into a podcast. It's very fun. But also my written work will be on alldlls.com.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Now, I'm not going to wish you good luck this week, but I'll wish you good luck for the rest of the season.
Appreciate it, Jason. Thank you.
And I hope you enjoyed that interview with Joseph. Now we're going to head on to Skywalker Steele. He also goes, his real name's Will. Skywalker is not his real first name.
How cool would that be?
Yeah, I mean, that would be awesome. You come out and,
You should have named one of your kids Skywalker.
I don't think so. I tried to suggest Kaline, after Tiger's great, but I was ixnayed on that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So Skywalker would have fell on deaf ears, but he comes out with a lightsaber out of the womb. Did his own C-section.
Yes. You should have suggested Skywalker first, and then when she shot that down, then you go to Kaline.
Yes, you're right.
Missed your chance.
I did. That's too bad. Preston is, forever Preston now. He won't change his name. All right, so we're going to head over to Skywalker Steele. We talked mostly defense with him. Talking Grit is here with Skywalker Steele from the A to Z Sports Dallas Morning Show. You can find him on YouTube. We were so happy to have him. So glad that he could clear out some time in his schedule for us. So first of all, Will, how you doing?
I'm great, man. Just got done studying up on the Detroit Lions. So when I got the invite, I was excited to accept it and talk to you guys about it because I like to know more about the opposing team. And what better way than a fan who knows the team more than I do. So thanks for having me on.
Hey, no problem. Hey, so how long you been doing your show and how long you been covering the Cowboys, just so you can give our listeners a little bit of context of who we're talking to here?
I've been covering the Cowboys professionally for 4 seasons. Now this is the 4th season. I've been doing Cowboys content, dating all the way back to 2000, maybe 15, on my own. And then, took this particular job to cover them full time the last 4 seasons for my morning show over on A to Z Sports Dallas. So been a dream come true. Excited to, cover my childhood team I grew up loving. But it can be tough as a Cowboy fan, but I'll push through it.
Yeah, well, as a Lions fan, I know what it's like to be tough to deal with that. And we've had our 2 franchises have definitely had some, controversial calls, I would say, in our history. And, our paths have crossed for sure. But glad to have you on here. So first thing I'm going to ask you is the name Skywalker. Where did that come from? I gotta know.
Everyone thinks it's because of Star Wars. It's not. I had a buddy of mine, Big Game James is his name. He also covers the Cowboys as a creator. When I was in Facebook groups, giving my opinions on things, this was years ago when Facebook groups were okay to be in. I don't know about now. I'm not on Facebook anymore. And I was doing podcasts via SoundCloud and posting it. He would listen. He would see how I reacted or how I would interact, engage. And he said, "Hey, man, I would love to get you on the show and invite you on." And we did that a few times. And he would call me Young Jedi Skywalker. And I'm like, man, that Skywalker, I like that. That's a nice ringtone to it. You mind if I use that professionally, Skywalker Steele? And he's like, "Hey, man, I don't care. It's awesome." So I kept it, and then rest is history.
That's good. Are you a Star Wars fan at all, or no?
I like the old school Star Wars stuff. I'm not really big on the new stuff.
Yeah, no, that's all right. All right, let's get on to some football. That's what people are here to listen to. I'm going to mostly focus on defense with you, but there's an offensive player that I want to hear your take on because he's personally one of my favorites. It's Jake Ferguson. If he wasn't on the Cowboys, he would fit well on the Lions just because he just seems like a gritty personality. So, he's not flashy. How does he get the job done? How does he do it?
Jake was a former linebacker in high school, and you see that mentality of Jake Ferguson on the field. I believe it was Barry Alvarez is his grandpop. So, he's not, he understands the game. He understands the sport. He understands and you see that passion flow right through him on the field. But Jake Ferguson's a matchup problem when you actually get on the field because he's sneaky quick. He's sneaky athletic. A lot of people, they think this is some Jason Witten 2.0. No, this is not. He's much more Sam Laporta in that than Jason Witten, where, you guys got one on your side where Sam Laporta gets that rock. Next thing you know, he's getting yak up the field, making guys miss. Love Jake. We love Jake here. He's kind of the heart and soul of this offense in regards to the skill players. And I'm pretty sure a lot of teams would love to have Jake Ferguson, but yeah, he's an X factor every week. And if they can get him going, better for the Cowboys.
I love the way Watson played, but man, he was so gritty in the game that we played last year. He was fired up, and of course, during the game, I'm yelling at him because he's on the opposing team. But secretly inside, I'm like, yeah, I want that guy on my team. He
Yeah.
seems awesome.
Yeah, he's good, man. He's good. He's our dog, is what we say. I don't know if you watched the Seattle game last year, but he matched Seattle's energy with Jamal Adams and other guys just trying to be in his face and, trying to intimidate him. Not happening. You're not intimidating Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, that's awesome. You need a guy like that, right?
Yes.
You need an enforcer for
Yep.
a hockey term. You just need someone to come out there and say, you ain't going to push me around. You just mentioned that he was a former linebacker. I want to hear about your linebacker group. I've been hearing very positive things about them. What's your impression on them?
Last year they used safeties at linebackers, so it didn't take much. It wasn't going to take much for Cowboys fans to be excited about an actual linebacker group. But in reality, this is a really solid group led by, now I say led by because he's the leader in Eric Kendricks, right? Who played under Mike Zimmer for years in Minnesota, former All-Pro there. He's having a solid season, keeping things in control, the quarterback of that defense, but he's bookended by two really young, athletic, physical linebackers in Maris Leofau and DeMarvion Overshown, who Overshown currently, given all the injuries on your defense, might be your best defensive player or one of, with, say, a Jordan Lewis, who you guys are familiar with. He's playing really good ball. Leofau is getting better each week. The linebackers, to me, the defensive line is going to have to keep them guys clean, but if they can, they're going to be the key to this game and trying to defend that run game that's dynamic for you guys. But I like our chances this year, even more than last year, even though the Cowboys played you guys well. I like the linebacking group's chances more than I did the safeties playing linebacker last season.
Okay. So you kind of touched on it a little bit with your injuries. So many of your impact players on your lines are going to be out. So how are the Cowboys generating pass rush in their absence?
It'll have to be Mike Zimmer dialing up exotic looks and blitzing those linebackers, right? Maybe blitzing the safeties, maybe blitzing the cornerbacks, just throwing different looks at Jared Goff, Ben Johnson and company. It's not going to be from the defensive ends. We're talking about guys who are primarily, run defenders right now playing defensive end. The Cowboys are down their top 4 guys: Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Sam Williams, Marshawn Nealon. I don't know how many teams are down their top 4 guys at any position. The Cowboys are. They're out there with practice squad guys and guys they just, signed last week. So I don't foresee them getting pressure in that way. It'll have to be with, stunts and exotic looks. And, looking at the film, I noticed, excellent offensive line you guys have, but utilizing the stunts is a way to kind of get some pressure on Jared Goff and tripping up this offensive line. So trying to run right through him is not going to happen with the group the Cowboys have. So you're going to have to do some exotic looks, mug the A gaps, blitz a safety, blitz a corner, maybe overload one side. It's got to be one of those games where we're throwing the kitchen sink at you guys.
Now, do you think they'll up the blitz rate? Cowboys are 11th in blitz rate when I just looked at the stats. So do you think that's what they're going to have to do, or do you think they're going to lean more on the exotic looks?
I don't think they're going to change too much in the blitz rate. I feel like they'll blitz, right? I think it's going to be how you're doing it. Are you just sending Eric Kendricks down the middle, or are you blitzing with the stunt involved? Are you overloading one side now, blitzing the corner? It'll have to be in a way that makes Jared Goff hold the ball for one more tick so you can get a coverage sack. I noticed he's been sacked 5 times in the last 2 weeks, and 4 of those 5 sacks were coverage sacks. So it can't just be all out cover 0 and Goff knows where it's coming from, because now he knows where to go with the ball. So you got to be able to do something to where he has to get it out quick, but he also has to hold it an extra tick, because maybe I'm dropping this linebacker to buzz underneath it. I'm blitzing from the opposite side. And now we're getting a coverage sack, because you're not going to generate it with Tyrus Wheat and Chauncey Golston as your starters at defensive end.
Yeah. Yep. You mentioned Micah Parsons. We're recording this before the injury report comes out today. Is there any chance that he plays this week?
No way.
No way.
No way. He'll probably advocate for it. Heck, he was advocating to play last week. He's dealing with a high ankle. Those are, I don't know, typically a guy coming back after 2 weeks from a high ankle. There's a bye week after this week, so you'll have 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks he'll have to rest after the bye week, once you include it. And you got San Francisco. So I just don't see it happen at all. It's Deron Bland who may come back in this game, per reports. But Micah, I highly doubt you'll see Micah out there.
All right. Well, I can't say that I'm sad about that. I'm not happy about an injury at all, but if he's going to miss a game, I'm glad it's the game that the
Yeah,
Lions
him and
played.
Panay Sewell had some battles last year. That was fun to watch.
They do. Panay Sewell is just, yeah, he's a
You talk
monster down
about
there.
so your guy is Jake. For me on your team is Panay Sewell.
Is it?
Love watching that guy play. Wish we had him on our team.
Yeah, if he didn't play offensive line, he could play tight end. That guy is incredibly athletic.
Yeah,
You know,
he
we've
is.
only thrown one pass to him so far, and he made a catch and got a first down on it. But yeah, love Panay Sewell. That's how often does a guy on the other side love your offensive lineman? That tells you how talented he is, I think.
Oh, dude's amazing.
Yep. All right, we've talked about two levels of the defense. Let's talk about the one that's left, the secondary. That includes the former Lion, Amani Aurorier.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had to play a lot of snaps the last game just because of injuries you guys are dealing with. Tell us how that secondaries line up, and tell us how Amani's doing.
Well, he made the game clinching pick 2 weeks ago in New York, and then last week, there's a play where I think it was Najee Harris made him look silly a little bit, but again, he's a practice squad player being called up because you're down to your fifth corner. So I'm not really expecting Amani to be a game changer of sorts. And in that game against the Steelers, they don't have a prolific passing attack, so it's kind of got to grade that one on a scale. Justin Fields is not a thrower in that manner. Both of his touchdowns went to tight ends. He doesn't really throw to his receivers, so it was tough to really tell. This game, you'll get a good read on Amani, but that's if Deron Bland doesn't play, because right now Deron Bland is looking like, according to Stephen Jones, Cowboys vice president, son of Jerry, says that Deron Bland could play 20, 25 snaps in this game. So if you get him back, and now you got Trayvon Diggs on the other side, who's starting to ramp it up a little bit more after the ACL. And then you got a guy you guys are very familiar with, Jordan Lewis, from Detroit, hometown kid, always gets up to play Detroit. 2 games in a row, he has interceptions. Hopefully he makes it 3. I like that group against the Lions group of Jameson and almost said St. Patrick, St. Brown plus Patrick.
Yeah, we got.
I like
Patrick.
that group. Yeah, right. So I like that group. But Amani, and look, he had a great year for you guys, but I'm not expecting that type of output from him. But he did overtake Andrew Booth, who was benched for his bad play against the Lions. But hey, man, and when you're the cornerback 6, I'm not looking for you to do a whole lot. Just don't get beat a bunch.
Yep. That's the way to go. Your secondary is given up. I looked at the passing yards is under 200 yards a game. I'm thinking that's more to do with your run defense and people not having to pass on you. Is that where the stats, kind of lie or whatever? Or what do you think?
It is very interesting, right? Because the Saints actually, and I believe the Ravens may be the only really 2 teams to really throw on you successfully to the point where they were able to score in doing so. But also in those games, they ran the ball on you. Mm-hmm. Ironically, they're the only 2 teams to run the ball on you successfully. So the Cowboys are in this weird stage with their defense where, as fans, after what happened in weeks 2 and 3, there was a panic if they could be able to stop the run. But in weeks 1, weeks 4, and week 5, they did well against the run. The problem is those teams weren't the greatest at running in general. Devin Singletary, Najee Harris, Jerome Ford, no one's scared of those guys. And then they don't have a scheme that really threatens you as well. When you played against 2 teams that do have good running back / quarterback, they did kill you, right? So this one is really going to be kind of the telling game for this run defense if it's really came around to being good, because they've held teams to under 3 yards per carry the last 2 weeks. But again, Giants, Pittsburgh, you guys have 2 running backs who are top 10 in success rate. So it's not going to be an easy feat to deal with that. As for the pass defense, that's Mike Zimmer's baby. Mike Zimmer has always, when he's healthy and he has good players, he's always put out really good pass defenses. So yeah, there's something to teams being able to run, but it was just 2 teams running on you. I think the pass defense is its strength. I think it keeps things in front of them. You get Deron Bland back now, Jordan Lewis, Trayvon Diggs. It's not easy to throw on those guys when they're healthy. So I don't think that's a mirage. I think throughout the season, you will see the Cowboys pass defense actually be pretty dang solid. The next step is to get turnovers. They haven't got the turnovers.
Yep. That's an important part of, the secondary knocking the ball down, but also getting the turnovers. We have Carlton Davis, and our secondary is pretty decent at knocking down passes, but can't bring them in. And sometimes you just need, you could deal with a couple touchdowns if you get those interceptions sometimes. But
Yep.
all right. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'm going to ask you, looking at from the Dallas Cowboys angle, what is the thing that you're concerned most about when you look at the Detroit team, when you've looked at the film?
Again, I've just specifically watched the offense. I'll be watching the defense today for those who are listening. If you want to check out my analysis on that tomorrow, which would be Thursday, you can. So I've just watched the offense, and the thing that concerns me most is that you are down, the Cowboys, that is, you are down to your defensive end 5 and 6 for the most part, right? And you're down to your 35-year-old nose tackle and a second-year nose tackle who is still trying to figure it out. You got an undersized 3-tech in Osa, who I like, but that front four against your offensive line and run game concerns the hell out of me. Because if you guys can live in second and short, third and short, or no third downs at all, the play action game is available. The play sheet is wide open. Ben Johnson can get in his bag. And now we're talking about maybe deep shots, maybe some deep crossers, Jamison Williams getting involved. All that stuff is available to you if you guys can run, which you guys have been. So I'm going to be honest. I don't use the word scared a lot. I hate to use that word. But I'm scared as hell of that offensive line in this run game in Detroit. It's the best one we'll probably see all season. It's the most successful one we'll see all season. And the problem the Cowboys had in the 2 games where they've been run on is a combination of a team out scheming you and out physically. They're just more physical than you up front. You guys can do both. That's a great combination.
That's a good compliment.
Oh, by the way, you just happen to have Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in the backfield that can run the ball, by the way. So it's not like it's Jerome Ford back there.
Yeah, if I were you, just looking at, and I'm probably going to get in this in my own podcast, but the tackling on the Cowboys is, the stats do not show that you're a very good tackling team, and Dave Montgomery breaks tackles like it's second nature to him. So I can understand that fear.
Yeah, they were better last week in regards to the Pittsburgh, but the previous 2 weeks and 3 weeks, really, it was like 30 missed tackles, which was unreal. Which the Cowboys were one of the best tackling teams under Dan Quinn. I don't know how that just flipped upside down on its head the next season with the same players, but yeah, they got to get better at that. If you're not wrapping up David Montgomery, he's going to score touchdowns.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder, like, you change a scheme or whatever Mike Zimmer is doing, and then you don't spend as much time on the fundamentals, like the tackling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You would think those guys, being professional players, that would be just second nature. But, when you're out there thinking instead of just playing, I think those, you forget to do the easy stuff.
That's a good point.
That's the way I look at it. We asked this to all our guests on the game. Any predictions that you have for this game? Doesn't have to be the score. Doesn't have to be anything like that. Something that you think is going to happen in this game that you see.
I'll do a Lions prediction, then I'll do a Cowboys prediction. I think the very first play of the game, tackle eligible. Dan Skipper, 1st and 10 at the 30-yard line, tackle eligible, sweep left, right, wherever. They're running right behind Big Dan, who, I don't know if you noticed, he used to play for the Cowboys.
Yep.
So that's what I'm going to predict. Very first play there, he's going to go to that referee. He's going to be very loud about it, very jumping up and down, and you guys are going to get a playoff, and it'll be fun. You'll have the commentators laughing about it, but 100% you're running tackle eligible with Dan Skipper.
What's funny that you mentioned that is, like, every home game that I go to with the Lions, anytime they mention that a player's eligible, the crowd just cheers loudly. It's got to be the only stadium that someone's cheering for, the 6th offensive lineman coming in, he's eligible. But yeah, I mean, it started out, it was incredibly loud, like the very first game after the Dallas, like we played the Vikings the following week.
Yeah.
Taylor Decker come out during the intros, and he was the player that caught the touchdown pass that was called back. And when he ran on the field, it wasn't a hand in the air. It was his rubbing his number, signifying he's eligible. But yeah, that was some crazy stuff, man. You said you had 2 predictions. You're going to
Yes.
go ahead on the other one.
For the Cowboys, I'm going to go 3 games in a row for the hometown kid, Jordan Lewis, will get an interception.
All right.
I don't know what it is about playing the Detroit Lions. He gets up for this. He usually has one of, if not his best game of the season against the Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we call him Sun God over here. He had a lot to say in the offseason about Jordan Lewis, and Jordan Lewis is a dog.
Mhm.
He's a dog that's pissed off after what happened at the end of that Steelers game with George Pickens, who was mad because Jordan Lewis was in his grill the whole game. So I feel like, unfortunately for Sun God or Jared Goff, he's going to take that out on the Detroit Lions for the third game in a row. Jordan Lewis gets another interception. Will that be enough? Who knows? But I think he gets a pick.
All right. I hope not. Jared Goff's already thrown 5 of them this year. Or I think 4 or 5, and that's enough. That's enough for the season.
That's enough.
He's been very careful with the ball. He goes through like a little stretch here and there that he, whatever he missed.
Yeah, he's not an interception merchant, but you're right. He'll go through these weird stretches.
Yep, that's what he does. So, all right, Skywalker, tell the people where they could find you, check out your stuff, and go ahead.
Hey, if you guys are interested to check out more of me covering the Lions, you can go on A to Z Sports covering the Cowboys versus the Lions, I should say. A to Z Sports Dallas on YouTube, and then on Twitter you can find me at Skywalker Steele, just like you hear it, Skywalker Steele. And I'm 95% of the time talking about the Cowboys. The other 5%, I'm just laughing and having a good time over there.
That's good. Everyone wants to be a part of a good time, so I hope you guys check it out. You've been awesome, Will. I appreciate your time, and you're a natural at this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on. And again, maybe we'll wrap again, or we'll talk again before the end of the week to get your take on the Detroit Lions. So if that happens, make sure y'all check me out again. Check him out again on A to Z Sports.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you learned something with those interviews. They were a lot of fun for me. Both those guys were 2 cool guys, and Jacob couldn't make it. Those had to be rescheduled during the day. Luckily, I had the day off today and was able to.
Luckily, Jason doesn't do anything, so he's just available whenever.
Yep, I was just waiting until, to pick up my boys early from school to go to the Tiger game. So I had time to kill. Jacob is running around and taking care of his 4 kids. So I only have 2, so I got
busy.
Double the amount of time. All right. First thing we're going to get into is some stats to be aware of.
I actually just have one. So my stat to be aware of is the Cowboys red zone statistic. So on offense, the Cowboys are 6 of 13. They've had 13 trips to the red zone. They've scored touchdowns only 6 times. That's less than half. And then on defense, they've allowed 14 red zone trips and allowed touchdowns on 11 of those. So the red zone defense is not very good. The red zone offense is also not really good. So I think that's, something for us to exploit there, is being able to make an impact once the game gets into the red zone.
Yep. One thing that I'm going to mention is the quick passing game. Dak Prescott was really proficient in the last game. He was 16 for 19 when he was doing quick passes, which is, I think, under 2.3 seconds for 151 yards. Lions have to be ready for that. Just like week 1 with Stafford, and they were getting the ball out quick. With the offensive line problems that we're talking about with Dallas, that's what they're gonna focus on, especially with this lack of running game. They are gonna have to do something to protect Dak, because Hutch on the outside against these rookie offensive linemen it's just a disaster, especially if they start running stunts and just confusing the heck out of them. You got a rookie center in there. That's a tough deal. So that's where I'm looking at. We just have to be ready for some quick passing. That's about all I got for stats to be aware of. Some of mine will fit in with the keys to victory. So
the Cowboys are they're top 5 for most penalized team. And I think you can attribute that, like we just said, they're flooded with younger players all over, but especially on the offensive line. 3 of their 5 starters are less than 3 years into the league. A couple of them are rookies. It's going to be very hard for them to stop Hutchinson. And like you said, if we're doing stunts, there's going to be a lot of holding. I imagine there's going to be a lot of penalties in this game too.
Yeah, well, hopefully we take advantage of it, and then we could put Dak in some precarious spots, and he starts forcing the ball in there. But this is another stat I want to mention. Dallas has the 5th lowest tackle rate in the NFL, and I think that's going to play huge in this game. That's, we talk about having a bunch of injured players. They're probably just thinking a lot on the field, and they're, just missing tackles. And when you have David Montgomery, out there with a team that, tackles poorly, that is, great for the Lions. And also Kyle Brandt might be giving him, a third scepter for angriest runs if he has another one and he, beats
Yeah.
down Dallas. I saw someone complaining to Kyle Brandt that he's picking the same players, and Kyle's like, well, it's on everybody else to do better because Dave Montgomery's killing it, and he is. He is a beast. All right, Jacob. I'm going to start out with our keys to victory. I'm going to give you my first one.
Yeah.
Hutch needs to be a monster and disrupt Dak. Hutch has, in 2 games against Dallas, he's had 4.5 sacks. I'm expecting at least 1 in this game, if not more. Obviously, leading the league in pressures. I think he's still 11 ahead. We had a bye week last week, and he's still 11 ahead of the next person in line
Crazy.
for QB pressures, which, yeah, insane. He's, playing at an all-pro level, and it's going to be hard for them to stop them, especially if they don't have a running game to be scared of. Man, that, he could just go full tilt. You just got to keep watch Dak because he will run. We have to watch that and, still contain the rush lanes. But if we could crunch, yeah. And Dak is mistake prone,
For sure. I've got an offensive and a defensive key to victory. So I'm just going to go with my defensive one because it kind of touches on what you said too.
Mhm.
So the key to victory I have for the defense, it's going to look a lot like it did last week. We shut down the running game and we make them throw the ball. The Cowboys finally let Rico Dowdle take over last week. They had been splitting carries like a 50-50 between him and Ezekiel Elliott, and their running game was almost non-existent. They let Rico carry the ball, I think, like 20 times to Zeke's like 5 or 6, and then they actually were a little more effective on the ground last week. They're still going to struggle to run the ball. We have a very good run defense. They don't have a very good rushing offense. How well is Dak going to perform if he has to throw 40, 50 times in this game and he's under nonstop pressure? The difference between this week and, the last game we had against the Seahawks is that Brian Branch is going to be back. So I think that that's going to make all the difference in the world to have Branch, especially if we're lining him up close to the box and blitzing him sometimes and dropping him sometimes, if we're able to press closer on the corners and make them, like you said, Dak was throwing the ball, I think he was at 16 out of 19 on those quick throws. They're going to have to do that because the pressure is going to be too much. So if we're pressing up more, it's going to be very hard for them to get really anything going. And I think Branch is going to have a huge game too. Obviously, Hutchinson, we expect him to have a huge game as he always does. Even if they're getting the ball quick, he's going to be in Dak's face for sure. But I think Branch is going to be an impact player again.
Yeah, I agree. That's a huge point because we really missed Branch in that last game. I think it's a totally different game. You're talking about, a young offensive line. If we pull Brian Branch up and then they got to make calls and they don't know if he's rushing or if he's backing up or if we're sending Branch and pulling one of our edge guys off to, cover a zone, just doing anything to confuse it, to confuse that offensive line. Maybe we get them to jump false start because they're we're showing blitz and they're jumping up. We're going to give them, 3rd and long and just keep doing that. Someone's going to make a mistake or we get, punt and we get the ball back and then we punish them with our running game. So I think that's going to be huge. I think, controlling CD Lamb, I don't think you could stop him. He's just too good. Just not letting him get over the top. We need Kirby to shading on that side, playing. Hopefully he can get another pick. That would be awesome. I'm interested to see after the break how Terrion plays. Is he less handsy? Are we going to have the penalties? Last time Carlton Davis was basically on DK Metcalf, another really good wide receiver, but totally different than CD Lamb. Not as physical. DK Metcalf is bigger, is more physical than CD Lamb. CD Lamb is he's speedy. He can make people miss. So it's a different wide receiver, but I'm really looking forward to that matchup in the secondary. So we'll see. The key thing is make them have a 10 or 12 play drive because I'm hoping somewhere in that 10 or 12 plays they get a holding penalty or a false start and it backs them up, and we're counting on them to be consistent. And then even if this leads into my next one, even if we let them get all the way down the field, they get a ton of yards. They're not a very good red. They can't perform well in the red zone, mostly because they're rushing yards. They can't rush down there. And when you can't rush down there, then that makes it just all the more difficult because it's a tight space. There's not as much open windows for the secondary. So I think if we, even if we let them down there, we're going to come out and we need to win the red zone. Kyle, I'll just finish my thought here and I'll let you speak, Jacob. Cowboys are, you already mentioned it. Their rating, they're 46% TD conversion rate, which is 22nd in the NFL. The Lions are 16th, but honestly, one of that is just one game because we were 1 out of 7 in Tampa Bay. We've been performing every other game, and the difference between that Tampa Bay game and the other games is like which one of these is not like the other. Jared Goff passed for 55 times, and we decided not to rush in that game, which killed us in the red zone. I don't think especially we talked about how poor the Cowboys rush defense is. I don't expect that to happen this game. It shouldn't happen this game. We should, dominate that line, especially with basically backups all up and down that line for them. And we have our starting offensive line in there. It looks like, Frank's going to be back. So I am expecting us to dominate there. We're going to have to win the red zone. I know that's every week, but I think that we can do that because Dallas is so poor. So if we even let Dallas go down there, we keep making them do field goals and we're scoring touchdowns, then that's a huge way you can win that game.
Absolutely. Kind of speaks on what mine is too, not specifically the red zone, but a lot of the same points here. So, the Cowboys defense, already said, they're kind of in the middle of the pack statistically. They have a top 10 pass defense, bottom 10 run defense, or almost top 10 pass defense, but the run defense is bottom 10. We just need to keep doing what we do. We need to play Detroit Lions football. We've got to make them, challenge them to stop the run, allow that to soften them up, and then make some impact passing plays. Exactly, what we did to the Seahawks. We just keep running the ball repetitively. Obviously Jared Goff was perfect in that last game. That was because the offensive game plan was almost perfect. I mean, we ran the ball effectively. Ben Johnson, really good play calls. We took, exactly what the Seahawks were giving us. I think maybe this game we try a few more deep balls than we did against the Seahawks, just because I think that's going to be open up a lot more. And like you said, they're going to be without DeMarcus Lawrence, probably going to be without Micah Parsons. Their pass rush is really, going to be drastically affected by that. And if Jared Goff has time for the play to develop in the pocket, he's going to do some damage, especially if they're already worried about the run and we catch them sleeping. Maybe J-Mo with another big touchdown or something like that. I know they really want to smoke the Cowboys because of what happened last year, right? We all know that that's fresh on everybody's mind. We really want to take it to them. We don't want it to be a 1-point game. We want to beat them double digits. We really want to take it to them. And I mean, I feel like on offense, we have to do what we do and just be dominant.
Yeah, I agree. We just be careful with the ball. You don't want to give them any extra chances. And like I said, we convert in the red zone and they don't. So I think, I'm happy with that game plan. Dallas does not get a lot of pressure and they've allowed a lot of time to throw. I think they're like they've allowed they're in the top 10 of, time, allowing the quarterback time to throw. That just allows those crossers over the middle to hit. And that's JMO, Amon-Ra, or Laporta, if we can decide to get him into the game plan a little bit more. Or Brock Wright. I mean, he's been sneaking out and doing some damage.
Yeah, right.
Too. I think it's going to be important to get, to third and short, and that, you can use your play action pass and the whole play call sheet is open at that point. So I think that'll be important. I think the Lions are, like you said, I don't think this is a 2-point game. On paper, Lions are favored by 3 in Dallas. I think that's a pretty good line just because, you're the away team, but I look for the Lions to dominate this game.
We should. I mean, if we're firing on all cylinders, especially coming off a bye week, Lions have had the last games have been really close, or the Cowboys have had the last couple games really close. The Lions are coming off the bye week. We had an extra week to prepare. On paper, it looks like something that should be a win for us. We know how that changes.
Yeah, Dan Campbell said in his other press conference, he's talking about, was it nice to see the offense, finally really just get, clicking. And he said, we want to get better every week. So we're looking at that is the floor for next week, like the Seattle game. And if Seattle game is the floor in your offense, watch out, because that was, I mean, it was an awesome game plan. Goff played out of his mind, and, Ben Johnson's pulling tricks out like the Philly special. And, it's just one of those things. It's pretty awesome. My question is, are we going to see a lateral in this game? We've seen, Lions had one, 2 weeks ago. And then last week we saw Seattle did the lateral against us to get a first down. Wondering if that's going to become more of a common thing until someone makes a mistake and it gets fumbled or something like that. Then it might slow down.
Maybe we do a fake shake and bake, run that same play and fake it to Gibbs and just let Amon-Ra keep running, or, maybe we do a flea flicker or something.
All right, let's move on here. Let's get on our grit picks.
Grit picks.
All right, first let's review week 4. Thursday Night Football was Cowboys at Giants. I said the Giants. Jacob said the Cowboys. Jacob's right. We both said the Ravens in the Sunday night matchup, Bills at Ravens. And then we both said the Titans and the Titans at Dolphins. So, Jacob, you won up.
I said the Dolphins.
Oh, you said the Dolphins on that? Oh,
I did say the Dolphins, yeah. I switched it so you could see, but...
Okay. Well, thanks for being honest. And so...
Right.
What's that bring our totals to then, Jacob?
So, right now, as it stands, overall, I'm 9-4, and you are 8-5.
You got me by one.
The only difference is that you could not pick the Falcons to lose because you don't want to be wrong about that. So
that's right. I know it was close. It went down to the last possession. I'll stand on that. I'll stand on that mountain. So let's get into who we're going to pick this week. Thursday Night Football, 49ers at Seahawks. Who you got in this one, Jacob?
So the 49ers are 3.5-point favorites at the Seahawks. This one is interesting because both of these teams have double-digit players on the injury report. I think the Seahawks had the 49ers had 10 or 11. The Seahawks had 16 players on this injury report. So it's going to be interesting to see who even plays this game. The Seahawks are still beat up from playing us. They just lost the Giants. They're at home. You'd think they're going to give it everything that they have, but I still think the 49ers are going to win a really close game. The 49ers are 2-3 right now. They lost the Rams. That would be a huge loss for them if they lose to the Seahawks. Obviously the injuries are making this a toss-up, but I'm picking the 49ers.
I'm going to go with the Seahawks in this one. This is their bounce-back game after getting right from the Lions loss. Everyone loses after they play the Lions, so I think Seahawks got this one. I'll go first on the Sunday Night Football matchup. It's Bengals at Giants. Not looking forward to this one. Usually Sunday Night Football is a good matchup. Man, I'll still watch it because I love football, but not really looking forward to this one. I'm going to go with the Giants in this one. What do you got?
Yeah, so Bengals are 3.5-point favorites at the Giants. The Bengals are 1-4 right now. They've been very unimpressive. They still have the talent and everything. They just, for whatever reason, are not putting it together. They're supposed to be a playoff contender, so they need to win. They've got to fix whatever issue they have right now. Obviously the Giants pulled off a crazy, good win against the Seahawks last week. I'm still going to pick the Bengals to beat the Giants at home here.
Yeah.
They're going to come in New York and upset them.
I had trouble picking that game. All right. Monday Night Football.
I mean, that could go either way. And really, if the Bengals drop another one and go to 1-5, do you start talking about making changes with the head coach or what? It just doesn't make sense for them to have the players that they have and for it not to be working out. Something's got to change.
Yeah, well, I think
that'll lead us into this next one, though.
Well, I mean, just to touch on it really big, the Bengals aren't playing like a team. You got T. Higgins more worried about other things. Jamar Chase worried about other things, contract and stuff like that. And I just, when you have those distractions, it just doesn't work well. Those are going to ultimately fall on the head coach, but sometimes it's hard to, appease all those players, especially, diva wide receivers. Let's talk about another drama-filled situation. We got Bills at the Jets. Robert Saleh was fired this week. Aaron Rodgers, resents any thought that he had anything to do with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. But it's kind of interesting, just the whole angle of the Lions, that was in the hiring cycle of Dan Campbell. A lot of us wanted Robert Saleh at the time. I would have been happy with him at the time. Obviously, I'm happy with Dan Campbell. Super happy with him. Wouldn't want it any other way. But almost everybody in that hiring cycle has been, fired or let go or is on a hot seat. And Nick Sirianni is the only one that's left with Dan Campbell. So, with all that said, a lot of times when there's a coaching change, there's some sort of, refocus. I'm going to go with the Jets on this one. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have, one of those I told you so moments where he'll just play out of his mind. So I'm going to go with the Jets.
All right. I have a little bit of a rant here about this, but, it speaks on the same thing that you just said.
All right.
How badly does Aaron Rodgers need to win this game?
Yeah.
Where he's at with his ego and everything going on. The coach is gone. You are out of excuses. He had that quote, about holding people accountable or whatever. I mean, obviously there's a long list of quotes about Aaron Rodgers that makes us hate him even more. But like you said, a lot of times when teams get an interim coach, it's like a breath of fresh air. A lot of teams play with more aggression. It lights a fire underneath them, or, they're like, finally, that guy's gone. We can kind of play a little bit looser. I don't think that's the case this time. I don't think he lost the team. I think he still had the support. I think it probably caught a lot of them off guard. They had the team. They had everything going on. They just weren't getting it done. So I'm picking the Bills. The Bills are 2.5-point favorites. I'm picking the Bills to win this game. And I really think that the Jets are just going to have to clean house. I mean, I know you said it earlier.
Clean house again, huh?
Right. I know you said it earlier, but if the Jets do lose this game, Devontae Adams is going to be in New York by like Wednesday or Thursday, because the GM for the Jets, Joe Douglas, is already on very thin ice. He's been on thin ice. He's been there longer than the coach was. And I can't believe they didn't let him go too. I mean, he blew it with Zach Wilson. They blew it with the offensive line. They tried to revamp the offensive line this year, but Aaron Rodgers is just not, he's not what they thought he was. He's just not been effective. He's also got his whole problem. Obviously we can go on and on about Aaron Rodgers not admitting when he's wrong or makes mistakes or trying to fix the issue, but I think that's the problem is the Jets owner thinks that he has MVP level Aaron Rodgers, and he doesn't. And you're right, Aaron Rodgers needs to have one of those games where he comes out and throws for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. And I don't know if you watched that game against the Vikings. Obviously the Vikings have a really good defense, but Aaron Rodgers was bad. Yeah. He was not good. He wasn't at all.
Yeah, he
I
can't
just
move.
think that this should be. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, he just can't move as well as he used to and just create stuff. And he doesn't. It's obvious he doesn't put in the time with his receivers to create that rapport anymore, which when he was right in Green Bay, I mean, he was one with his receivers. A lot of back shoulder throws. He just knew the timing. Since he's, been missing training camp and doing all his other, garbage stuff that, he thinks he could just miss a team. You're not getting that place. That's, difference between a 40-year-old Tom Brady and a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers is that Tom Brady still had that work ethic and still demanded excellence from his teammates. Aaron Rodgers does that, but then still doesn't show up for training camp part of the time. And you can't demand excellence from your teammates when you don't show up all the time, in my opinion.
Right.
So
no, that's a great point.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I just see with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers still has the ability to come in and, like you said, have a great game, especially when he wants to prove people wrong. Aaron Rodgers is full of ego, and that's just, will fuel his fire. But who knows? Would I want to see it crash and burn? Yeah. After they lost to the Vikings, then I really wanted them to win last week just to give Vikings a loss. But since that happens now, I can fully hate Aaron Rodgers, but I still think that he's going to have one of those games. Jets defense is still solid. It's still a solid defense. We'll see if the offense can muster any points. Zach Wilson's not looking as bad now, is he?
Yeah, right.
So.
That was a really good point that you made about Tom Brady. Like, makes me think of Peyton Manning also, because Peyton Manning came back. Peyton Manning played when he was older, and That was a huge storyline at the beginning of the year, the fact that he wasn't showing up to the mandatory stuff. And then the head coach, Saleh had to be like, oh, we talked about it before and it's excused and whatever. Like, what a bad look that is. And it's an even worse look now.
Mm-hmm.
And, he probably looks great in training camp when he knows that the pressure can't hit him and he has time to, throw to, whoever. But you're right about that, too. Like, he doesn't have Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson. He doesn't have this same group of receivers that he knows and trusts and are helping him out. He's got to get on with these new guys, and he's not doing it. And he's also making it the new guy's fault. I mean, that's just what he does.
Yep. He has his way. So, I mean, I'm not in the room with him. I've never, obviously been a teammate with him. Maybe he has a different rapport, but just from the outside looking in, he doesn't seem like he takes personal responsibility for his actions. And at this point in his career, which is a shame. All right. Enough Aaron Rodgers talk. Grit guarantee time.
It's time for the Grit Guarantee.
So my grit guarantee this week, I am putting out here that we are going to hold the Cowboys to less than 300 yards of total offense.
Whoa. Calling a defensive shutdown. All right. I'd love to see that. Mine, on the other hand, it goes with the offense. I'm saying Demo gets 2 touchdowns in this game. He's keeping pace with Jamal right now. So if he stays healthy, he might touch that record that Jamal set, just a couple, 2 seasons ago. So that would be awesome. But I think Demo is going to get 2 touchdowns. We're going to show some red zone. The only thing that would stop that from that is if it's Gibbs' turn and they're in the red zone and he gets them. But I think I'm going to give Demo 2 touchdowns.
That's kind of what happened last week, right? It just happened to be Gibbs' turn on the drive when he was the one to pound the ball in.
Yep.
But you're right. I mean, that could easily happen for sure.
Yep. So, all right. Great episode, Jacob. Thanks for, getting on here. And yeah, it was fun talking. And we got some really good conversations. Got to bash Aaron Rodgers, which is always fun.
Right.
Yeah. So I do want to mention that we uploaded a YouTube video breaking down a couple of Jahmyr Gibbs plays. If you want to check that out on our YouTube channel, Talking Grit Podcast. Our podcast is on there too, just in audio format, but we uploaded, new video. I think there's one from Jacob on there. Jacob's working on something else. So we're hoping to add a few more videos here and there just to add some more content for you guys.
So feel free to comment, comment. Let us know what you want to see. If you like it, if you're not feeling it, we always like to hear from other people.
Right. Yeah. And if there's a certain play or something that you want me to break down, I'd be glad to do that. It's always fun, especially if I have some direction on what people want to see. So I certainly don't mind doing that. I tried the 2 plays that I picked were not like the plays that you're going to see everywhere. It was kind of some plays that I felt were very important for the game. And so just check it out. Let me know what you think. All right, Jacob, anything else before we take off here?
No.
All right. For Jacob, I am Jason, and let's go Lions and Tigers.